Привет and welcome to lesson 25 of the Russian language course with Dmitry Slomov. Today we shall talk about our spare time and about spare time activities. So, time in Russian время, время. And free, when we are talking about time, sounds свободное, свободное. Free time, свободное время. So, today we shall talk about our свободное время and about things we like or do not like to do in our свободное время. Scott wants to ask his Russian friend Igor, what does Igor do in his free time? What in Russian что? You, ты. You do or you are doing. Делаешь, делаешь. A question what are you doing will sound in Russian что ты делаешь? Что ты делаешь? In free time, в свободное время. В свободное время. Scott says, Игорь, что ты делаешь в свободное время? Игорь, что ты делаешь в свободное время? Let's say Igor spends his free time at his country house, dacha. He may say in Russian way, in my free time I'm at dacha. В свободное время я на даче. В свободное время я на даче. Or he could also reply, I spend my free time at home. In my free time I'm at home. В свободное время я дома. В свободное время я дома. But of course, Igor may say, in my free time I go, or in Russian way, ride, to dacha. I ride, when we do it many times, when we used to do it, in Russian sounds езжу. Езжу. Я езжу на дачу. It sounds similar to еду, but еду means that I'm riding right now, or I have definitely decided to ride, and this is the only thing I'm gonna do. So, if Igor were riding to dacha immediately, any moment he had free time, he would say «В свободное время я еду на дачу». But he just uses to ride to his dacha. So he says «Я езжу на дачу». В свободное время я езжу на дачу. Or he could say, I used to ride to the forest. Forest, лес. Лес. To the forest, в лес. В лес. Igor says, в свободное время я езжу в лес. And he could add that he goes to the forest with his friends. Friends, in Russian, друзья. Друзья. With friends, с друзьями. С друзьями. So, Igor may say, в свободное время я езжу с друзьями в лес. However, when you do something together with other people, in Russian you better use we, like we used to ride with friends to the forest. We used to ride, ездим. Ездим. So, Igor says, в свободное время мы ездим с друзьями в лес. And if he used to go with his family, family in Russian, семья, семья, it is like the number 7, семь, and the word I, я, like 7I, семья. With family, семьей, семьей. So Igor says, в свободное время мы ездим с семьей в лес. Or, for example, в свободное время мы ездим с семьей на дачу. He could also say, in my free time I am at home with my family. В свободное время я дома с семьей. Or I'm at dacha, на даче, with, let's say, my friends. В свободное время я на даче с друзьями. Very good. And Igor wants to ask back, and what about you? Do you ride to the forest? You ride, ездишь. Ездишь. So Igor asks, а ты? Ты ездишь в лес? А ты? Ты ездишь в лес? And if he were talking politely, or if he were talking about Scott and his family or friends, he would say, you many ride, ездите, ездите. А вы? Вы ездите в лес? And Scott could reply about himself, да, я езжу в лес. Or he could reply that he does not ride to the forest. Нет, я не езжу в лес. Нет, я не езжу в лес. And of course he could reply for his family. No, We don't ride to the forest. Нет, мы не ездим в лес. Now, let's say Scott does not ask Igor, what do you do in your free time? But he wants to ask, what do you like to do in your free time? Like, when it is you one like to do something, любишь, любишь. To do, делать, делать. So, what do you like to do in your free time? Что ты любишь делать в свободное время? Что ты любишь делать в свободное время? Or in polite form, you mainly like to do something. Любите. Любите. Что вы любите делать в свободное время? Что вы любите делать в свободное время? And Igor replies, I like to ride to dacha. To ride, ездить. Ездить. This is the form that does not point to who does something. This is the form that in English you use with the word to, like to do something. To ride, ездить. Ездить. Like, when it is I like, люблю. Люблю. By the way, like and love are in Russian the same word. So the phrase I love you sounds in Russian Я тебя люблю. Я тебя люблю. So you may ask your beloved one in Russian, do you love me? Ты меня любишь? Ты меня любишь? And you get the response, I hope. Да, я тебя люблю. But what concerns love, we shall talk about it later in this course. Igor likes to ride to dacha. So he says, я люблю ездить на дачу. Or в свободное время я люблю ездить на дачу с семьей. Let's say Scott likes to visit his friends. In Russian way it is said like to go for visits. For visits, в гости. В гости. To go or to use to go, ходить. Ходить. It is somewhat similar to use to ride, ездить, but it is ходить. So Scott says, in my free time I like to go for visits. В свободное время я люблю ходить в гости. В свободное время я люблю ходить в гости. And if he responds for his family, we like, любим. Мы любим. Мы любим ходить в гости. Scott could also say, I go for visits. I go or I used to go. Я хожу. Хожу. Somewhat similar to езжу. Хожу. В свободное время я хожу в гости. Or I go to a gym. Gym, in Russian, спортзал. Sport means sports in Russian, and zal means a hall. So спортзал is literally a hall for sports. Спортзал. Я хожу в спортзал. Scott can also ask Igor, do you go to a gym? You go. Ходишь. Ходишь. Ты ходишь в спортзал? Or do you like to go to a gym? Ты любишь ходить в спортзал? And Igor could reply, I do not go to a gym. Я не хожу в спортзал. Or I don't like to go to a gym. Я не люблю ходить в спортзал. Be aware that when you want to say that you like to stay at home, you better just say that you are at home in your free time. This will sound more Russian. В свободное время я дома. Very good. Now let's say Igor engages in sports. I engage in something, in Russian, занимаюсь. Like Sunny Mouse engages in something. Sunny Mouse, занимаюсь. See, in Russian it sounds like engage myself. So the ordinary verb form ending with u gets one more ending, s. Занимаюсь. Занимаюсь. This may be also an ending ся, and it anyway stands for self. But the word for sports, sport, changes if one engages in it and becomes спортом. Спортом. So Igor says, я занимаюсь спортом. Я занимаюсь спортом. Or he could say, I engage in household activities. In Russian, one says it like, I engage myself in home. home in Russian, dom. Dom. Remember, at home, дома. But when one engages in it, it becomes домом. So one can say, я занимаюсь домом. Many Russians like to ride bicycle in their free time. There is a special word in Russian that means riding for fun. It is not like riding in order to get somewhere, but just riding for the sake of riding. I ride for fun. Я катаюсь. Катаюсь. Once again, self-ending s. And when you say катаюсь, you might specify what do you ride. Bicycle in Russian, велосипед. Велосипед. Like very low C paid. Велосипед. And when one rides it, or on it in Russian, it becomes на велосипеде. На велосипеде. Я катаюсь на велосипеде. By the way, younger generation may use a much simpler word for a bicycle. Велик. Велик. And so, one would also say, я катаюсь на велике. But there are many people, especially older generation, that would consider you rude if you say it like that. Alternatively, one may say, I like to ride a bicycle. For fun. To ride, for fun, кататься. Кататься. Я люблю кататься на велосипеде. To go skiing, in Russian it is like to ride on skis, for fun. Skis, лыжи. Лыжи. And on skis, на лыжах. На лыжах. So Scott may say, I go skiing in my free time. And what about you? Do you like ski? Я катаюсь на лыжах в свободное время. А ты? Ты любишь кататься на лыжах? Я катаюсь на лыжах в свободное время. А ты? Ты любишь кататься на лыжах? Very good. Now, a very popular leisure activity may be traveling. To travel, in Russian, путешествовать. Путешествовать. Like when one travels, one may put a chest. Wow, what? Put a chest. Wow, what? Путешествовать. Путешествовать. Игорь may ask Scott, Scott, ты любишь путешествовать? And Scott says, yes, I like to travel. Да, я люблю путешествовать. So Igor asks, oh really? Да. And he continues, and where have you been? Where? Где? Где? You have been, I have been, he has been. When we are talking about a guy, we always say был. Был. Igor says, да, а где ты был? And Scott says, I have been to, let's say, New York, Miami, England, and Germany. I have been to some place. The name of the place is used in the same form as in the phrase I live in some place. So Scott says, я был в Нью-Йорке, в Майами, в Англии и в Германии. So in lesson 24, you have actually learned also how to name the places you visited. Now, if Jane were talking with Vika, the ladies would say, I have been, or you have been, or she has been. Была. Я была. Jane asks Vika, Vika, где ты была? And Vika replies, я была в Лондоне. And if one asks politely or talks to many people, one says, where have you many been? Где вы были? Где вы были? And the response may be я был for a guy or я была for a lady. But if one replies for himself and other people, like we have been to London, it goes мы были в Лондоне. Мы были в Лондоне. Very well done. Now, the next lesson will contain some more leisure activities. Some of them are popular in Russia, others are popular in other places. So, see you there. Пока!